Hello, this is Alex Kapatanakis again for Atlas Group, and I wanted to get together in this video to talk about something that again is kind of been missed by the news and the pundits. And that thing is the effect of the US dollar, the effect of news and a major event that took place that is having an effect on the US dollar. A few months ago, we had the biggest fiasco, I think, in our military history, where we allowed everything we had done in Afghanistan to collapse. And when that happened, when we lost Bagram Air Force Base and when we allowed Afghanistan to become part of a terrorist organization, we created something that not only embarrassed the United States, but this is where the news has completely glossed over, we began the death of the United States dollar as the world currency. Very few people have even brushed on the subject. But in order for you to understand just how important this debacle, this embarrassment has been for the US dollar, we need to understand what happened in 1971. In 1971, Richard Nixon was doing something similar to what happened with what happened in Afghanistan. He was mired in a very embarrassing and very badly run war in Vietnam. And at that time, our currency was backed by, under the Bretton Woods Agreement, backed by gold. And it was a strange hybrid of backing of gold. But for simplicity's sake, let us understand countries had the right to demand the amount of gold in exchange for the dollars that they had placed in the US government, in the US system. So what this means is governments were buying bonds and investing with US dollars, and they also were they had agreed to use the US dollar worldwide as a currency. And in order for that agreement to be valid, the US government had agreed that governments could exchange the US dollar for the value of gold anytime they wanted. This was happening perfectly well until the peak of the Vietnam War, when primarily the French government under de Gaulle decided that he didn't trust, and he knew for a good reason, he didn't trust the fact that having France invested in US dollars was a very smart thing to do, because we were spending money in a war that we did not prepare for and we weren't paying for. So effectively he was saying, look, you guys are using my French money, my dollars from France, and you are devaluing it by printing, by making money you don't have, because under a gold standard, you have to be responsible. You can't spend what you don't have. You can't print gold. So what happened is the French government and a few other governments, but primarily the French government, began to demand the exchange of its dollars for gold. This demand became an emergency, and Richard Nixon, instead of agreeing that this was an agreement, we were going to live up to it, instead of doing that, Richard Nixon declared that the US was under attack by speculators. And he didn't tell the American public what the truth was, that the French and others were calling their bluff, America's bluff, and saying, give us the value of our gold and you keep your US dollars. He didn't say that. He said, we're being attacked by speculators. So he got on the news in 1971 and he made a declaration. We're no longer going to have a gold as a standard. The US dollar temporarily will only be fiat, which means paper. The declared value by government that this piece of paper has value. Fiat currency. So Richard Nixon, in one day, immediately changed the rules and basically told the French to go pound salt and not get their money. He kept the gold, he kept printing dollars, and as you know, Vietnam was a total disaster after he made that declaration anyway. And we still have our memories of what happened there. Now, why is this relevant to what happened in Afghanistan? Because in 1971, Richard Nixon also had Henry Kissinger do a very brilliant move, evil but brilliant, where he convinced the Saudis that the US dollar would be the only way that you could buy oil. So effectively, he still maintained the power of the US dollar as the only way the world could purchase a barrel of oil. And he did this by saying, you know what, if you guys only accept dollars, we're going to protect you. It'll be protection money. And that's how we got the US petrodollar. And Henry Kissinger essentially negotiated that all oil that was going to be drilled from OPEC would be purchased only by dollars. This allowed Nixon to continue to be irresponsible because effectively the dollar was still the world currency, even though now it had no backing, even though now there was no gold behind it, but you still had to buy it. If you wanted to do business with gold to get oil, and essentially with everything that revolves around oil, which is the economy, you have to keep buying US dollars. So Nixon and Kissinger were able to save the US dollar as the world currency by saying to the Arabs, we're there for your protection. We will give you our muscle. You give us oil and the dollar, and we're happy. Everything is fine. The world followed this. The world followed this since 1971. And now brings us to Afghanistan. There are things happening in the world that are beginning to show and look like a giant Jenga game. And Afghanistan was one of those major pieces that are being removed. And all of a sudden now, the US dollar is not looking so good. And getting back to why is Afghanistan important for the dollar? Because the Europeans, the Arabs, the rest of the world is starting to see if the only reason for the dollar's use as a world currency is for world protection, police power, for lack of a better word. If that's the only reason, and you guys can't even protect yourselves and can protect American citizens in Afghanistan and protect your friends in Afghanistan, and you leave and you've abandoned even your base with all of your military equipment, you just ran. If that's what you do when it's your own control, when it's under your control with your own American citizens, what are you going to do for us? How are you going to protect us? Why are we even bothering? The world is beginning to see, and I think that's why when Afghanistan fell, I think historians will see that as the beginning of the end for the US dollar as the world power currency. That will be the day. And that was the death knell for that world power dollar. How is that going to be affected now in the coming days, months, and a couple of years? Right now, we're seeing NATO and the European allies, they're questioning whether or not the US is going to abide by its promises to protect NATO, to fight the Russians. I've made a promise to go into Ukraine. That could happen any day. That could happen in a month. That could happen in 2 months. It's not going away. You've got China making a declaration that Taiwan is theirs, and now they're getting even stronger because of Afghanistan. Because of Afghanistan, you've got China even more emboldened, and they're saying, you guys aren't going to sit, you're not going to fight for this, and they're probably right. You're not going to do anything to us if we do it. You might get angry, you might make some, you might sanction us, but you're not going to do anything. The Russians know if they go into Ukraine, it's up to the Europeans to do something, not America. The Europeans. And the Europeans are starting to realize, you know what? We've got to take care of our own defense. The U.S. isn't going to come to our help. So as all of this begins to gel, as all of this begins to become even more crystal clear to the allies, to the Europeans and Arabs, they begin to ask the question, why are we using the dollar again? Why is the dollar the world currency if they're not protecting us? Why are they getting that kind of benefit? Because you understand that we get an incredible benefit being the world currency. As a world currency, we give everybody else inflation. Whenever we print dollars, they get inflation before we get it because it follows all around the world. Anyone that uses the dollar has that dollar devalued before it ever comes to us. So the dollar has less value because of monetary policies in Panama before it has a problem in the United States. It's usually even more because the farther away, the more of the inflationary effect it has. Now, the governments will begin to ask that question. The people will begin to ask that question in those governments. And they're going to be deciding what's in it for us to keep the dollar as the world power. Why should the Americans not have the benefits of their inflation, and we do get the benefit of the inflation? Why is that happening? Why is that just? These questions are going to be asked, and it's going to happen more and more in these coming months. And what happens when that question does occur? What happens when an invasion happens? Iran, let's say, invades Syria or makes a move against Israel because it's not afraid. What happens if the Russians take Ukraine and Taiwan is taken by the Chinese? What happens to the US dollar? When all of a sudden, and we sanction those powers, and those powers say, you know what, you're not going to scare us anymore. We're not going to use the dollar. We're going to use the euro, or we're going to use another currency that we care about. And we're going to start buying all of the things you told us we couldn't buy with other currency. What will happen? What will happen to the US dollar? At that point, you will see a tsunami of dollars all around the world coming right back to the United States. And that will mean that the value of the dollar will be garbage. We will start seeing even more shortages. And why? And we'll see shortages because people that make goods in other parts of the world won't want dollars, and they won't want to send it to the United States. So we've seen this happen. We've seen this happen in Venezuela. We've seen this happen in South America, in Argentina. We've seen this happen in multiple countries in Europe. When they don't care about the currency, they don't send goods. What happens then? We have shortages. We have a drastic loss in the value of our dollar and our savings and our wealth. And what you've heard before, a massive shift in wealth is going to occur. There will be a shift in wealth. And it might even happen overnight. We don't know when, but when it happens, it has the effect of being so quick and so powerful that before most people even know what to do, it's already occurred, just like a tsunami. The only thing you can do, you can't stop it, you can't control it, you can't do anything about Russia, China, can't do anything about the US doing whatever it wants, but you can take some control. And that control is make sure you control your business. Make sure you keep your debts down. Do some research, do your homework, and consider changing some of your savings into gold and silver and keeping it in a safe and secure place. And if you want to know more about that, please give us a call and we'll be more than happy to give you some information. Thank you.